Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, or team up against a guest and battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. Hello, my choice then for Ant films is a bit of a cop-out. I went with Ant-Man. Yes, I know it's a Marvel film. But...
Ant-Man!
I don't know what just happened there, but...
That's how you meant to introduce the film. Didn't you see the first trailer of Ant-Man?
Really? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
I do not remember that.
No, the very first teaser trailer they ever did of Ant-Man, it seriously, YouTube it.
Wow.
This was before they did like a proper trailer. They announced it, and they did this short. You don't remember this? They did this short of Paul Rudd. Yeah, Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas. So it was just Michael Douglas and what... I've forgotten his name again. I'm forgetting.
Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd, yeah.
No names, Boaz. Carry on.
So it was Michael Douglas and Paul Rudd. Paul Douglas and Michael Rudd. So they were like in a room just together. Have you not seen this? They were just them two in a room, and they're just smacking their knees like that. And then they go, ants, ants, ants. Ant-Man, like that, and then it just ended.
Wow.
That was like the very first thing they ever said, posted about Ant-Man.
Wow.
Do you remember that? Because that blew me away. I was like, what the fuck? And then a few days later they released a trailer.
Well, I remember all the posters of Mjolnir, and you just see a little figure on the hammer and on the shield and stuff. That was all quite fun, but I never saw that. That's blown my mind, frankly. But
every time I think of Ant-Man, I literally just think of that moment. Okay. I don't know. Check that out. Google that out. I'll send you a link, actually.
Yeah, so I went for Ant-Man. I mean, I do love my Marvel films. We both do, so it's been a while. It feels like, anyway. Probably only a few months, but... But there was another Ant film choice, which I really do like a lot. It's just one of these kind of schlocky 70s films called Phase 4. I guess you haven't heard of this film, Boaz? Phase 4?
No.
Directed by Saul Bass, of all people, who used to do the title sequences for a lot of Hitchcock films, like, Psycho, North by Northwest and all that. So he was kind of a bit of a graphic designer as a trade in the film industry, but he did direct one film, and he directed Phase 4, an ant movie. And there's a lot of really interesting macro photography using real ants, lots of different ants, which is kind of cool. There's this comet that kind of goes past the Earth and kind of somehow makes ants on Earth super intelligent. So it's basically like a three-hander, and there's these couple of scientists in this out in the wilderness, and it's basically like a kind of a war film between humans and ants.
That sounds so weird.
And they kind of rescue this girl, where the ants kind of kill this girl's family, and they rescue her, and all these kind of phases you think are just like the humans trying to experiment of, why have these giant ant hills just arrived in these funny shapes? But in the end, it's kind of like the ants are actually testing out what the humans are doing. And it's kind of really freaky towards the end. But I didn't go with that one in the end because it's quite slight, and I don't think there's much to really talk about with it. But it's kind of a really interesting film, if you kind of like that sort of thing. I mean, the acting is terrible. It's really dumb at times. The girl that they rescue, they see some of the ants in this glass tube. that they're studying, and she just like smashes the glass tube thing, and all the ants escape because she hates them because the ants killed her family. I'm just like, what are you doing? You just let them loose. They end up destroying the air conditioning in this facility. So it's a bit dumb, but it's kind of fun though. But like visually, and the ideas in that film are really interesting. But I implore people to watch that film. I'm not sure there's much really to talk about on a full-length podcast, but it's kind of cool.
How long is the movie?
It's only like an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and 25, so it's barely a feature film. But
Wow.
it's kind of fun. So yeah, I went with Ant-Man in the end. So what happens in Ant-Man? Well, I'm doing the IMDb thing. Armed with a super suit with the astonishing ability to shrink in scale but increase in strength, cat burglar Scott Lang must embrace his inner hero and help his mentor, Dr. Hank Pym, pull off a plot that will save the world. My trailer voice there.
I personally don't like that one because...
What, trailer voices?
No, like the synopsis, because...
Oh, right, okay.
Because that always bugs me when, say, like, he increases... He doesn't. Like, I think they explain it in the film. Like, he retains his strength at small size.
Yeah.
So if he can lift a table, then he can lift a table as a,
So, of course, Edgar Wright was very much involved with the writing and was initially on board to direct this film back in the day prior to 2015 when it was released. He wrote the script with Joe Cornish, and Joe Cornish is promoting his new show Lockwood & Co. on Netflix, his new TV show, which looks interesting, kind of a YA thing. And he kind of mentioned to one journalist in an interview that, he's asked about Ant-Man, what happened there, and with Edgar Wright, and he was basically saying Marvel wasn't really on board with Edgar Wright's auteurism, which we all kind of guessed that was the case at the time, why he was fired. But I remember at the time when he was let go, that it was quite a big deal and quite a shock at the time that, because I think they fired him within like less than 3 months before they were going to go into production. So, and then brought Peyton Reed in. I think he did a fine job, Peyton Reed, frankly, but there's always this sense of what if with the first Ant-Man film, like this could be like awesome, because I think a lot of MCU fans are like, would you want to watch, openly watch Ant-Man again compared to a lot of the other films? Certainly the origin films, a lot of people would be like, not really, compared to a lot of the other characters. So it is kind of a missed opportunity for Marvel, and it is such a shame because they kind of went with with other directors. Now with Taika Waititi with Thor Ragnarok, that's very much a Taika film. So it's like, well, hang on, why can't Edgar Wright bring his Ant-Man to the screen? And even before that, they hired James Gunn with the Guardians of the Galaxy. That was very much a James Gunn type of tone of a film, which he had done like Sliver with. So it does feel a bit unfair. And also it kind of suggests that they weren't terribly confident with the Ant-Man character bringing it to the screen compared to a lot of the other ones. Yes, like Guardians of the Galaxy was a huge risk, but I think there's just a lot of, it's a team film as well, so there's a lot of rich stuff, and it's a space film, whereas it's a guy that can shrink. That's about it, so I feel like that is a bit of a shame.
I think I remember reading, it was an interview with Edgar Wright, if he had watched Ant-Man, watched what, Peyton Reed had done, and he said, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of, no, I haven't watched it, and I don't intend to. I'm not saying it's bad, but he spent so long trying to make it and going on this journey to make it and poured his heart and soul to try and do it his way. Then he was let go. And he said, to ask me to watch it would be like, say, do you want to see somebody have sex with your wife? It's just a weird feeling. It's like, no, not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a weird analogy to go with, but it makes sense. So, bloody hell. Bauer's always derailing the podcast. Fucking
that was blame Edgar Wright. Blame Edgar Wright. I didn't make it up. Or maybe I did. I can't remember.
Firstly, do you feel like going into this, they didn't feel that confident? And was it a missed opportunity for you?
I love a lot of Edgar Wright movies.
Because you're more of a comic book reader than me, so...
Yeah, I was never like that into Ant-Man. I know a bit about Ant-Man, especially, more when he's like affiliated with the Avengers or something. But yeah, not really the initial character. He's never really interested me. And especially when I even heard that they wouldn't be focusing on, like, that Hank Pym, who's the main Ant-Man in the comics, wasn't going to be the focus. He was going to be a mentor. So it gave me, like, some real Legend of Zorro vibes. Or is it The Mask of Zorro? The Mask of Zorro? With Anthony Hopkins, where, the original Zorro, De La Vega, is to the sides, played by Anthony Hopkins, and he's just teaching this new Zorro. And you have this new character made up for the series. And that I was getting vibes from that, because I think Scott Lang had not been long introduced in the comic books. And also generally the vibe that I heard about the film of it's a smaller movie, which is kind of funny because they're all of the Ant-Man movies now, with the exception of possibly the third, but we don't know what the full plot is, are much more lower stakes than like literally any other. And I think that kind of fits, like a small hero fit for small missions,
Quite literally,
yeah, quite literally.
Ant-Man was described as like a palate cleanser after Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
And kind of ironic as well, with the fact that Hank Pym was the one that created Ultron in the comics.
Yeah, absolutely, so. Yeah, it's much more heavily associated with Hank Pym, Because, I found that strange, because I do remember when they came out and they did it that way round. And I think I remember saying to you, I was like, that is really strange because, in the books, it's Hank Pym makes Ultron. So, to me, it didn't make sense why you would introduce Ant-Man afterwards. But they kind of changed that to fit Ultron more with Tony Stark. Yeah, and also, that it's done as a heist movie, a heist comedy. It's quite a different template.
So initial reactions, Baz, with this one?
Yeah, I quite like it.
Yeah, I quite like it as well. I think that it unfortunately, it comes under this "it's okay, it's fine" category in Marvel films. It's never going to be at the top of your list of like, oh, I really want to rewatch this Marvel film.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that.
Watch it on Disney Plus, watch the Blu-ray or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's kind of in my mid tier.
Yeah,
where it's an enjoyable film. It's fun. Special effects are cool, and the fight scenes are cool. It doesn't have the most out there or engaging plot, and the bad guy isn't terribly interesting, but it's okay. It's okay.
So directing then, I do love the first action scene where Scott tries on the suit for the first time. I think Peyton Reed does a great job of just working out how to do this, like combining small macro cameras with real sized objects and obviously using CG as well. And I think my favorite parts are when Luis's belt buckle knocks him down between like the floorboards because Luis is having a poo-poo. Not a poo-poo pie or whatever, but I love the brilliant sound effects gag when the needle of the record player goes between his legs. I mean, the Ant-Man increases in strength, so clearly his ants in his pants are stronger too. And of course, the ginormous rat was funny. I love the sound design too, with all the like booming sound of the people dancing on the dance floor. That was kind of great.
One thing I always think about that scene is because he goes from the bath to that house party to someone's living room and the vacuum cleaner and like a rat and all that, and then a rat and then out onto the street. But it's like, who the fuck is having a house party in the daytime? It's broad daylight. It's the middle of the goddamn day.
And on the middle floor as well.
The middle floor, that doesn't make sense. You do it on the bottom floor.
Well, it seems like a nightclub, yeah.
Yeah, and why can't anybody else hear this? Like, why can't he hear it in his bathroom? Louis? Like, is the sound... are the sound soundproofing? The soundproofing must be insane in that room. You've got to think, how did he even fall into it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that bit never made sense to me. Most unrealistic part of the movie. You can have, decreasing in size and sentient ants.
The realism is just not there in
Yeah,
that scene.
exactly. Yeah.
I love the little like prison escape scene where they get really creative with the ants. Like they bring in the Ant-Man suit to Scott in his cell, like, and they all form up to create like a countdown, which I thought was genius.
That was cool.
And I love the flying escape scene. There's like a moment where he's flying on an ant and there's like a cop car really close and you're not sure where he's landed. Then they're just standing on the wing mirror and the camera pulls out to reveal that. That was really cool, I thought. Peyton Reed is really playing with angles and experimenting with ideas around shooting characters that are really tiny. I liked how efficient the scene is too, where Scott starts to get sick and falls off the flying ant and then wakes up in the next scene. It's funny and efficient to end the scene rather than Scott Lang just arriving at Hank Pym's house. He's just an efficient ant rider already, I mean, I love the creativity with the ants during the heist scene as well, where like Ant-Man rides a boat of ants, and they form up to lift the Ant-Man out of the water pipe is great. And I wouldn't want to be the ants at the bottom of the boat though, nearly drowning. There must be like, are we there yet? You do realize I'm at the bottom here. I love the cool like flying shots of Ant-Man flying with Anthony through the computer servers and the camera all spinning around at times. I think that's kind of what Marvel is always really good at, that kind of thing. And plus, I never felt so upset for an ant before when Anthony gets shot and dies.
Yeah.
Literally bites the bullet.
And in such a cool way as well. I like that, whereas slow motion, basically wings severed, jumps off. Yeah, and the hatred in Scott's eyes through his visor. I regret that.
Do you feel like they could have pushed like the ant stuff in this film a bit more? I mean, or is it kind of just at a right level for you? Because there's all sorts of different types of ants that they use in the heist, which is kind of cool. Like ants deploy C4 and stuff, and the crazy ants conduct electricity. You got bullet ants in there that take out some guards or distract the guards. I think I would have personally wanted a little bit more ant action.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
And like in Ant-Man and the Wasp, they just completely forget about that he can control ants.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And all the other films, like that's just not there anymore, which I think is a real shame.
Yeah, although I think because of the fact that from Civil War onwards, he can turn huge, and especially in Ant-Man and the Wasp, it's like she does the shrinking stuff, and he can. Like, that's his trump card. Just get big and then smash shit up.
Yeah.
So, like, why do you need ants at that point? But yeah, no, I kind of agree.
Yeah, I feel like that's a missed opportunity. I mean, I just think back to, like, the Suicide Squad with Ratcatcher too. Like, she controls rats in that film to literally take down the giant starfish at the end of that film. So I'm like, well, why can't Ant-Man have more ant powers in later films?
Actually, to be honest, that would be a really cool scene. If he could, like, control... Because he's usually controlling, like, maybe 100 ants in this movie. But, like, what if a billion ants just, like, covered the place in ants? Just, like, a swarm of, like, black carpet made of insects. Like, that would look crazy. And that would be, like, the ultimate ant-based thing to do. You go, there's so many guys... it's like, what can you do? Control ants? It's like, look at this, motherfucker. And just everywhere is covered in ants.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're drowning in ants. It's like,
You're right. They kind of just forget that and they just focus on the giant man angle with certainly Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I think is a real shame. But yes, I mean, I guess because it's just a big spectacle and they want to make it different from the first one. But...
I think you could do, like, cooler things with ants, I think the ants definitely help with the heist. I think my favorite ones are like the electric ones. They were pretty cool. But yeah, they could have been used a bit more. I always find this when he uses the bullet ants, because they're always mentioned. It's like they're around his bed, bullet ants. Yeah, they hurt, and they're he's got to tame them like the other ants. And when they're used, like they bite that guy, and then Luis knocks him out in one punch. I'm like. What were they really necessary? Luis is a fucking beast. He's taken down 2 people. An ant has not taken down a single person. Luis has just knocked out 2 people. And, you could say he had the assist of an ant, but he would have done that even without the ants.
Well, I would have preferred just more of those bullet ants just to kill him, I guess, or just swarm him. But then you're going into a bit more of a horror territory and a tonal shift. But
crawl into his eyes, just dig in, burrow, eat through his brain.
Yeah. I guess that's why Edgar Wright got fired, I guess. I want ants to swarm more people. I'm like, you.
No, it's too many ants, Ed.
But it's called Ant-Man. What the hell?
You go too far. Ants are gross.
Yeah. The action where Ant-Man is fighting guards in the Pintech building, I thought on the whole was really good. The decisions of when Peyton Reed decides to go from normal size shots of Ant-Man looking really small, hitting guys, to zooming in really quick to see clearly what Ant-Man is doing at his size was great. The flip onto the gun barrel while it's firing is great, and the bullet bombardment in semi slow-mo is great, especially from a sound design point of view. But there are moments where you have to find Ant-Man when he is really small in normal size shots. And I'm talking split seconds, but when the action is so quick, it's a slight problem. Half the time you're just following objects, moving on its own, and not Ant-Man, not seeing Ant-Man. And the guy's tie is moving and not seeing Ant-Man moving the tie before he flips him. It's no surprise that they don't do this changing of kind of perspectives in the action too often for me. So I liked it, but there were moments where I'm where's Ant-Man here? I can't see him. Oh, there he is.
I found that quite a bit. I think, to me, the most distracting fight scene, because of the constant shrinking and enlarging and kind of losing track of where the hell he is actually with the Falcon. Which conceptually, a great fight, another superhero versus superhero fight. But yeah, I don't know. I just kept kind of losing track of where the hell Ant-Man's meant to be. I think I had the same problem of you're being very selective when you show him in miniature, when you get that camera down there. You're being selective when you do that. And when you do that, cool. But when you don't do that, sometimes, and because the action is just so much going on. Yeah, it's so fat. It's cut so fast. I can just be I have no fucking clue where he is right now. Which I guess must be what it's like to fight him. You're where the fuck is he? But, I would prefer to see the choreography,
Because there is they are playing with that perspective for us. It's supposed to be like that for us. You're being shown the perspective of the guys that he's beating up.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. This is what it would be like if you were facing him. He's formidable. You don't know where the fuck he is.
But at the same time, it would be nice to know for us where he is.
Yeah, exactly.
in those moments.
Yeah.
Because there's a balance. There's a fine balance of just showing people kind of just beating themselves up with no one there, and it could look ridiculous. So there's a fine balance there.
Yeah.
Because in the Falcon fight, half of it is just Anthony Mackie just flinging himself about.
Yeah.
On him by himself.
Yeah, I think it's my least favorite because they've done it so many times in MCU movies that it's somewhat of a meme. At some point in the fight, a hero has got to smack the shit out of another hero for almost no reason. It's just got to happen. Heroes have got to fight each other at least once. And that's probably my least favorite one because, I just cannot see what the fuck's going on. It's not fun. And, the times where they do put, Scott, you see from his point of view, I do like that. I guess with fights, I'm not sure, because you see when he runs up the gun, I like that bit. And I wish there was more of that you could actually see him when he's down there. Do more of that. I don't mind. I don't think I would get bored of it. And I actually think my favourite fights are the ones towards the end, where he's fighting Yellow Jacket, and you can see them both. When they both go down, you see them both. When they're up, you see them, because you've got to,
Well, I think with that, a lot of that fight, they're shrinking and enlarging at the same time. Well, most times.
Most of the time, yeah.
There's one where he kind of he flicks him into the bug zapper with a table tennis bat, but that's the only time where there's a big difference, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, that's my favorite shot, favorite scene, actually. I love how they combine like the macro Ant-Man perspective and our normal sized perspective for comedy. And I love how Ant-Man uses a table tennis bat, as I said, to swat Yellow Jacket into the buzz zapper, and you just hear a small bzz. Yeah, that was great. Then you have like the classic camera coming straight towards Yellow Jacket, and Thomas the Tank Engine is about to take him out, and then cut to normal size in a big wide shot in Cassie's bedroom, and Thomas just falls off the track.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
I think that's one of my favorite ones. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes me laugh every time.
Yeah. Because it's set up as this epic thing, the train sounds like a real train. It looks huge. The camera's on him. He's like cowering in fear. And then it's just a bloody toy train.
Yeah.
That's quite funny. I think my favorite single shot is actually when he puts on the Yellow Jacket suit and they're fighting in the helicopter.
Oh, right.
So that whole fight, I like that fight, and I like it in the briefcase and in the pool. I think it's a great fight.
Oh, that's fun, yeah.
But my favorite bit is where Scott is really small and Yellow Jacket is huge, and he goes to punch him and then immediately shrinks, but the camera still has it like a mid shot. So where, you saw the mid shot of his body while he was big, and then he shrinks to minuscule. And then the camera basically like zooms in. So, because he's so goddamn small, but it zooms in on them fighting. I really like that. You're like, where's he gone? And it's just, woo. And I'm like, wow, that looks so cool.
Yeah.
So I really like that shot.
Directing score, Boaz, what are you going for?
Go an 8.
Solid 8?
Yeah.
I think, Peyton Reed does a great job overall. Yes, there's always this kind of feeling that like, what could Edgar Wright have done? I guess you would kind of see a lot more just like Edgar Wright-isms with his camera work, I guess, like lots of whip pans and stuff. And
yeah,
I guess being more creative with his camera moves, maybe, I don't know. But I think overall Peyton Reed does a great job of just like mixing your perspectives of what's going on. Yes, we kind of talked about that there's a bit of a fine balance there, and it doesn't always work. But yeah, I think overall it's not bad. Again, and he uses that with a lot of comedy and stuff too. So yeah, I would go maybe like an 8 point. Yeah, an 8.3. Screenplay then. The opening scene set in 1989 is interesting because you get a sense right off the bat that these Pym particles are dangerous in the wrong hands and dangerous full stop. Michael Douglas breaks that S.H.I.E.L.D. guy's nose after saying, if only you'd protected Janet with such ferocity. So there's suggestions, Janet is gone because of the Pym particles, and S.H.I.E.L.D. tries to replicate it, and Hank Pym refuses to give up the formula, or they have to come up with some way to explain why Ant-Man hasn't been a player in the universe until now. So I think it's a bit of both for that opening scene, really, of kind of explaining or contextualizing why Ant-Man hasn't been around, whilst explaining why the Pym particles are super dangerous in the wrong hands. I mean, do you actually need this scene at the start? I'm not really sure you particularly need it, but I don't know. I feel like the film could work without it just as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's cool to see Peggy again, I guess, but and John Slattery.
So there are a few things. It doesn't really add anything, but things later in the film do allude to it. So it does tie in. So, where he says to the guy that he had punched, who was in S.H.I.E.L.D., where they meet again when he goes to the company, and he's like, how are you doing? And he's like, how's your face or something? Because obviously he punched him.
Yeah.
So, that joke wouldn't have worked without the first scene. And while you don't technically need it, it gives some context. I mean, he explains it anyway, why he doesn't trust the Avengers, because that would be a big thing. It's a big thing for most of the films after the Avengers were done. Like, why don't you call the Avengers?
Yeah.
Kind of maybe the only criticism from Winter Soldier, which, is a perfect film, but, it's post-Avengers, and you're like, why don't you call the Avengers? But he has, a valid reason. because he even suggests it, called the Avengers. He's like, he doesn't trust Starks. I spent all my life trying to keep it out of one Stark's hands. There's no goddamn way I'm talking to another Stark.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. It's not really essential.
We've kind of talked about this a little bit in terms of a directional point of view, but the Falcon action scene is where I was like, yeah, Edgar Wright didn't want this in his film. And I think it's where the producers of the film kind of steps in and says, this would be really cool to put, an Avenger in this film, but obviously an Avenger that we can afford for this film. To pay a lesser actor, no offense to Anthony Mackie, but yeah, if you're going to put Iron Man or Captain America as a cameo, it'd be like, it just would be weird and completely outstage Ant-Man. But what they really mean is that they don't really have full confidence in this film with Ant-Man on his own. This scene is cool, but it's mainly Anthony Mackie fighting himself. It's quite clunky anyway, story-wise, where they have to steal some equipment to help them with the heist. And the film wouldn't... the film would work completely without this scene. It just doesn't need to be here at all.
No, because either you can explain... Because the main thing is the plan for the heist. And they need this, whatever the hell it is. I can't even remember what it is that they need. It's like, this is how inconsequential I think it is. But they need it for some security reason. But you think you could easily come up with something around that. Like, one, Hank is a billionaire. He could just buy this thing. Well, he's a scientist. He could make this thing.
Yeah. eBay joke. There you go.
Exactly. And then they think they're going to get it from an empty warehouse, and it's like, the warehouse is the Avengers mansion. It's like, are you fucking serious? Like, how can you not? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, how can you not know that?
I'm sure that must have been all over the news.
I do like the sudden scene where Darren Cross appears in Hank Pym's house. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this guy. There is a sense that they needed to put an extra scene with him in there, because I think Corey Stoll doesn't have too much to do in this film, but I think the mentor and father figures aspect of the film is really well done. Like, Darren Cross wants Hank on his side and really wants to impress him that the company is producing crazy profits at this point in the film. But on the other hand, he's like, why did you push me away? So there's distrust on both sides. And when he leaves, Hope is like, he knows. So I like how the stakes are kind of raised by this like uneasiness of each party not knowing how much they know about each other's plans, so I do quite like that aspect of the script. But I kind of wish they used Corey Stoll more, Darren Cross a lot more in the film.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So I do like that aspect, because he's like, for him, Cross, Hank was like a father, and he feels like abandoned by his dad. And there is this, he's trying to play it off and be jokey, and he's doing this like, I'm going to one-up him. But, you could tell it makes him sad. Like, I just wanted to do this together, and what the fuck, what was your problem? And he's losing his mind, which I think actually, when they talk about him losing his mind, I think makes him a little less interesting, because it's like,
okay,
he's just nuts, at a certain point. Like, he's just evil. But another thing that I think is a problem is he has more connection to Hank Pym, but he has nothing that ties him to Scott. Like, they do not know each other. Like, at all.
No.
Other than fighting each other in their suits, they have never interacted.
I think that's why, like, the casting was so good of casting Paul Rudd, because other than casting Paul Rudd, there's, like, not much to his character at all compared to the other characters. There's a lot going on with all the other characters, yet there's not really anything going on with Scott Lang's character. Yeah. And I think to my next point, like, I realize this film is supposed to be like a palate cleanser after Age of Ultron, but I don't think there's enough like emotional stakes here. They're not high enough for me. Like, the relationship between like Scott Lang and Cassie isn't strong enough, and I don't think they have enough scenes together. And I think it's supposed to be like the emotional heartbeat of the film, but it's kind of not. Like, the relationship Hope has with her father, Hank Pym, is a lot better. Like, the dynamic they have is brilliant. where Hank won't let Hope use the Ant-Man suit to do the heist because he lost his wife, Janet, because of the suit. So he feels very protective of Hope, but Hope feels she can use it. You know, she has all the skills, etc. So that aspect of the relationship always felt more fleshed out. You know, Cassie has something about her. You know, she's funny, but the action at the end is great to watch, but there's no emotional investment between her and, you know, Scott Lang. There's a bit, but not compared to that other relationship between Hope and Hank. You know, the characters that have, you know, well-written emotional ties are sidelined. Yes, Scott is probably a more interesting character than Hope, but he doesn't have any interesting relationships with anyone, you know, which is unusual in a film like this.
I think that's an interesting assessment. I think I might partially agree with that. I'm not sure I fully agree with that, but I do see definitely where you're coming from. He's a good guy who's trying to do the right thing, and you know has got this reputation. But yeah, I do agree that like most of it, the plot at least, is focused on. I think there's more meat, you know, character wise or history wise to Hank and his daughter and Hope and Cross, but more screen time to Paul and his journey. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like, you know, towards the end, you don't really feel the stakes between, you know, him saving his daughter and stuff.
I never really felt that Cassie was in much danger.
No.
I felt like she was just having a good time seeing, you know, a giant ant and a giant Thomas the Tank Engine fall out of her room. But, you know.
I think I would have tied... I think it just would have made more sense to tie Cross closer to Scott. Like, it maybe even at least halfway through that he knows and he's going to kill Cassie or he's captured Cassie. I know that's a trope, but something that ties them together.
Yeah, there's nothing, is there?
Because there was absolutely nothing. Like, the suit doesn't concern him. I don't even know really why he said yes, other than, you know, it's the right thing to do. And he has that speech, so it's the right thing to do. But this isn't going to affect Cassie's life. It's not going to affect his life. He's more doing it out of a sense of obligation, like, you know, they freed him from prison.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, hopefully we have a more of a stronger relationship between, you know, Cassie and Scott Lang in this new film, Quantum Mania. Hopefully that will be the focus, the emotional focus, because that's just been completely missing, really, throughout this whole kind of franchise.
Yeah, although somebody said something that was quite interesting, where it was they never really hung out that much, like him and his daughter, because, you know, obviously she lives with her mum and the cop, and he barely sees her. And then in the second one, he's under house arrest. And then between the second one and the third one, he's technically been gone for 5 years.
Yeah.
And never saw her grow up. So I do want them to definitely delve into that in the third one of like, maybe she doesn't know him, you know, she doesn't really know him, you know, as a person. And maybe he doesn't really know her as a person. I think they should explore that of like, Jesus Christ.
So it just feels a bit emotionally hollow, that final action scene. I mean, it's great to look at, but yeah, there's a lot missing. Favorite lines? Like, there are some really great funny lines. A lot of them are scene sealers from Michael Pena. Where Scott Lang asks him near the start, like in his van after he picks him up from prison, and he says, so, how's your girl, man? Yeah, she left me. Yeah, my mum died too, and my dad got deported, but I got the van. You know, he says it all while smiling. Michael Pena basically fucking steals this film.
I think he's my favorite character. Yeah, he's really funny. I like. I should have said this in direction, but I like how they present all of his stories, like his meandering, ridiculous stories, as the people in them talk exactly like he does.
Yeah. I did write that down, but I wasn't really sure where to put that. I had that in acting. But,
I would have put that in directing, because...
Okay.
Yeah, because that's like how it's shot. Like, they could have done it without them talking. But I think that was an interesting choice to reenact it, but have everybody talk exactly how he talked.
No, I didn't steal anything. I returned something I stole. Yeah, you got a camera on an ant. Sure, why not? Kind of one they manipulate in the trailer. My days of breaking into places and stealing shit are done. What do you want me to do? I want you to break into a place and steal some shit. It's kind of a cool one. It feels like a big leap from Sugar Cubes to this, as Scott Lang is falling through the air with Anthony.
I like the one, were you even aiming for the hand? Where after she punches him in the nose.
Yeah, we don't like the Falcon scene, but I do like when he kind of meets him for the first time and he says, "Hi, I'm Scott" to the Falcon. Did he just say, "Hi, I'm Scott"? With Hope watching them. That was brilliant.
Yeah, that was funny. Do not tell Captain America about this.
Another one from Michael Pena where he meets Hope for the first time. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm good. I'm just excited. And your girlfriend's really hot, so, makes me nervous too. And you're very beautiful, ma'am. Oh, my Lord. From Michael Douglas. That was brilliant. I'm deploying the bullet ants. Paparana Claire de Mama. I don't remember what they're called, but I feel bad for this guy. Michael Pena again. When they're driving to his house and there's lots of cops around and he says, "Scotty needs us. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing going to stop us." And there's loads of cop cars there. And he says, back it up slow, back it up. Which is great. Scott, yeah, you're full of shit. Oh, yeah. I think my favorite line is when the giant ant walks past one of the cops and he says, "That's a messed up looking dog." That always makes me laugh.
Yeah, I think that might be my favorite as well.
Screenplay score, Boaz, what are you going for?
I think I'm going to go 7.3.
Ooh, okay. Why lower than directing, sorry?
Yeah, I just feel like there were several things that I think I would have changed. Maybe develop Scott and his motivations a little more, his relationship with Cassie. I would even say his relationship with Hope, because I felt like they were good friends and that they grew on this journey together, but I did not feel like they were in love. I just did not get that at all.
No. The kiss was a bit like, oh, where the hell did that come from? I don't.
And at the end they kiss. I was like, where the fuck did that come from?
There was no sexual chemistry.
There was no chemistry whatsoever. It felt like they were getting to understand each other as friends. There's people that don't like each other, and then, oh, we've become friends. And I like that journey. And then they kissed. I was like, what the fuck? I don't think you really accounted for this. So I didn't really like that. And I think Darren Cross is an interesting idea for a villain, but I just don't think he's very memorable.
No. I mean, there are theories that he could be MODOK in
I have heard this.
Quantumania.
Yeah, I have heard this, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be true.
I am fully on board with, because I do really like his performance in this film, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Develop him further. I just felt he wasn't as developed as he could be. So, I don't know. There's just small things that I think are just missed opportunities. It's just things, I can just pick little things that kind of bug me.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah, the pun, yeah. I get quite antsy about puns. But anyway, apart from those little things, I do generally enjoy the movie. It's just there are tiny things that I reckon could have been done a little better. But I do find it very funny. I think it's one of the funniest MCU movies, definitely.
I think I might go a little bit higher. Not too much higher. I agree. It is very funny, and Paul Rudd certainly brings a lot of that humor to him. Great lines. Michael Pena is genius with those lines as well. And we should say Adam McKay had a pass on this script as well. So, and obviously Paul Rudd has worked with him a lot in the past too. So certainly in terms of humor, it works really well. I do love the dynamic between Darren Cross and Hank Pym, but it's a shame that Scott isn't with that dynamic of who knows what and everything, and in their emotional relationships are really good, but Scott is not in that, so no. That's a problem.
He doesn't have a dog in that race. If Hank was the one to kill Cross, then that would feel a little okay.
Yeah, so I'll go 7.4. So just one decimal up. Acting then, I do like Corey Stoll as Darren Cross. I think he's a great bad guy, and I love the little acting moments he has in his first scene where he's presenting the new building and says, and it says Cross Industries on the model, and he sees Hank Pym looking at it, and he looks a little awkward, but soon moves on like he doesn't really care. Then after the main presentation of the Yellow Jacket, one of the money people says, "So it's a suit." And then Corey Stoll has this like big smile on his face, like, "Did you not see the presentation?" Like he can't believe what he just said, you know. "Yeah, I'm going to kill you later," kind of a smile, you know.
Crazy eyes.
Just great villainous acting.
Yeah. He's got a happy smile, but crazy as fuck eyes.
I think when Hank tells her the truth about what happened to her mother, the acting's fine. It's all fine. There's nothing terribly special here. But then when Paul Rudd says in such a straight face, "This is awesome. It's awesome, you know. It's important. You guys are breaking down walls. You're healing. It's important." I ruined the moment, didn't I? And it just makes a okay scene emotionally into a great scene with Paul Rudd's delivery. And Hank says, "Yes, you did. Yes, you did ruin the moment." And then Scott says, "I'm going to make some tea." You know, he does this very overly expressive, you know, looking like a fool again type moment. You know, he's so good at that.
Yeah, I think I remember watching in this interview that Michael Douglas said one thing that pissed him off about filming Ant-Man in the script. He said it just kind of annoyed him that he'd have the scenes and he'd have a lot of dialogue to remember and to spout off.
Yeah.
You know, because he's a scientist, so, you know, he's got to give a huge speech. And then at the end, Paul would say something stupid right at the end. It'd be like he gets a line where he says something dumb.
Completely off script.
Gets a huge laugh from the audience, yeah. But you say, so he's saying he's watching it, and I've got all these lines, and then he just finishes his line, and the whole bloody theater is laughing because, you know, he's meant to set him up, and and he was like, "I just wish I got more funny lines." You know,
he really doesn't have that many.
Yeah, I think he's the straight man in the film. Like he's like, you know, he's serious.
Sure. But I'm not even sure Michael Douglas is that good in this film, to be honest. Like, he's okay, and like towards the end, there's a scene, you know, the Revolution scene where they're all where he's coming to terms with the fact that Scott has successfully come back from the quantum realm, and he's just like, "Oh my god, it's amazing! How did you do that?" And, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of get.
And it's just a bit like, there's not much writing here, not much to play with, and he doesn't really do much with it at all. And that scene just kind of fizzles out, and it's just like, oh, okay. Moving on then. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm like, sure. Okay.
Yeah. I think actually I agree that I think my favorite scenes with Hank are whenever he's talking to Darren Cross.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because there's just this tension, and they both do that well.
Yeah.
Like there's just this tension in the air, and they're trying to be formal, but you can just tell there's something. And I quite like that. But yeah, I do agree. Yeah. Everything else, he just, you know, he says his stuff, and then, you know.
Yeah, you say he's a straight man, but I'm not sure he's amazing in that either. I think Paul Rudd just brings an awful lot to the comedy here and definitely outshines all the others, really. The film has this idea that the more they use the pin particles in the suit, that it alters their brain chemistry, which is part of the reason why Hank doesn't use it anymore. Corey Stoll's character, Darren Cross, is apparently using the Yellow Jacket off screen, altering his brain chemistry. But I feel like he's not allowed to really go to a crazy place in this film. It's more subtle in that showdown in the lab where everyone's got guns on each other. But I feel like Corey Stoll is held back a little bit because of the story device that we don't know whether Cross knows each other's plans, etc. So I feel like he's held back by a story reason. I mean, what do you think about like the whole brain chemistry thing? Because I think that could have been kind of a better angle if Corey Stoll was allowed to be a bit more crazy. But
yeah, I think I agree with that. So I think one, they introduced that his brain is getting affected fairly early on. So personally, I don't know what he's like not crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even how he is as, you know, quote unquote crazy, he's intense, but he's not like, he doesn't come across as like insane.
No.
And, you know, obviously he's quite obsessive with Hank and stuff and trying to outdo him. I think like the worst thing he did was kill that guy that questioned his plan, you know, where he like makes him into goo.
Yeah.
That was probably the worst thing he did. I think maybe one, I would have had him like progressively get crazier, and then towards the end, just let him go over the top. You know, just let him go. You know,
Yeah, for sure.
fucking full on Joker dribbling and just a lunatic, or even make that a reveal. I think that would have been a cool reveal rather than just blatant. Because I even forgot before I watched this again that they blatantly say it very early on, where Hank is like, "Yeah, I think it's affected his brain." You're like, okay, so you know he's turned himself into a nutcase then.
Well, it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. And I would have much preferred if towards the end, you know, he's gone batshit because of the chemicals and they didn't know that. Then it would make it a little sadder as well. If maybe they try to talk him out of it and like then they have to kill him. So it's almost like putting down a dog rather than, you know, he's not that bad, but he was made.
Yeah.
He made himself that bad.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of wrote themselves into a hole with the whole brain chemistry thing with the Ant-Man, with the, you know, the shrinking suits. And obviously you want like a big reveal of Corey Stoll finally in the yellow jacket suit, because it's implied that he is using it and experimenting with it to alter his brain chemistry. Yeah. But I don't think that's particularly very clear that he is using it. So it does feel like a very forgotten thread in the film, which I think is a shame in terms of an acting standpoint for Corey Stoll.
Yeah.
And even from Michael Douglas as well, because obviously the whole reason he's not Ant-Man anymore, not necessarily because he's an old guy, but just because, you know,
it takes a toll.
Yeah. That's all he says. It takes a toll.
Yeah.
Okay, can we see that a bit more?
If, you know, sorry to correct you here, but I don't think Darren Cross ever wore that suit before, because I think it's not the suit itself, it's the particles. So it's what he was, you know, the energy he was making to shrink things.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I think he was just huffing the fumes, like, you know, that shit. You know, whether it's in your suit or in a lab, it's not good for your brain. That's at least how I took it. So I didn't really take it that he's ever worn it before. Yeah, but generally, I mean, one, I think it's revealed a bit too soon that his brain is deteriorating. And again, it is used as a sort of story trope to hand, because to be honest, actually, like Scott Lang, when they're in the basement, he gives like a load of reasons why this film shouldn't occur, which I do find really interesting. Like he pokes holes in the plot for them to pepper over those cracks, so it makes sense. And I do like that from a writing point of view, because, you know, somebody is at some point would have made this criticism, you know, had they not done that scene, and then they've got to make stuff to make it make sense, because it's like, you know, well, why don't you call the Avengers? I don't trust Starks. You know, why don't you let your daughter do it? She's fucking excellent at it. Well, you know, obviously he fears for her safety. And why don't you do it? You know, you're perfectly capable. You know, it's bad. You know, the stuff is bad the longer you do it, you know.
I think even in like the final fight as well, like from an acting perspective, to actually show that he has gone full nutcase, like he always has the helmet on. I don't know if there could have been more occasions.
Yeah, like for him to take that off.
Where he could have taken the helmet off. Like Paul Rudd takes it off a lot, so why can't he do it? So
I think that would have been a good idea if during the fight, like, you know, some of his mask is torn or he opens it up. You know, because I think that is a shame. Like when he starts donning the villain garb, he never takes that thing off.
Yeah.
And you know, while I don't like it in films, you know, like in Spider-Man 3, where they constantly peel the mask off, because what's the fucking point? Where they didn't it. But you've got to do it sometimes so the actor can act, you know. So I actually see what's going on. You got to do it sometimes, and they don't do it at all after he puts the costume on.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the actor's eyes from under the glass, you know, the red glass and the yellow glass, but not that well.
Yeah, not that well.
You really have to look at their eyes to see what's going on in their head or whatever.
In their hair.
So I think that is a problem as well.
Yeah.
In terms of just engagement, especially when you don't have much emotional engagement anyway.
Yeah.
So acting score. Oh, favorite performance. Sorry.
Maybe Paul Rudd.
Yeah, I think I'll probably go Paul Rudd as well.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the more genius elements of this film to kind of save it is the casting of Paul Rudd. He just brings great charisma in comedy acting, and I think Michael Pena is right up there, and Darren Cross is right. Corey Stolar's Darren Cross is right up there as well. I think Evangeline Lilly as Hope, she is interesting, but again, there's not too much to work with that character.
But I think what's great with Paul Rudd is, on the face of it, he's not actually even got that much to work with either.
Yeah.
But I think he's just so naturally charming and incredibly funny. Like, his timing is on point. He's a comedy actor, that he is just a joy to watch, and that is missing in, a lot of the cast. But I definitely think if they had cast somebody else as Scott Lang, I don't think just anybody could read this. It's not like, it's a part anybody could play. I think this is specific for Paul Rudd, and I just don't think it really would work as well with a different actor.
Acting score, Baz, what are you going for?
Oh God. I'll go a 7.7.
I think I will go for a 7.6. No, 7.5. Right, let's add up the scores then for Ant-Man. Ant-Man gets only 46.2. I thought it was going to be closer, but the more we were talking about Ant-Man, the more it wasn't as close as I thought it was going to be. So A Bug's Life wins with 50 points to Ant-Man's 46.2. So a fairly comfortable win, I would say, for A Bug's Life, and I would say pretty deserved. Next week, as Creed 3 is coming out to the big screens, we are either talking actor-director films, so an actor and a director being the same person, which is kind of an interesting idea, or Michael B. Jordan films too. We have done a Michael B. Jordan film podcast already, but he has done some interesting work. And our guest for next week will be Gary from the Choose Film podcast, our first returning guest for the podcast, so that will be very cool to see if they can keep his winning streak going. All right, it's time to say goodbye to the Mr. Encyclopedia Man. Bye-bye, sir.
Oh, sorry about that. Like, the electrical ants must have gotten in the way because I didn't hear a word you just said.
It's time to say goodbye to the Encyclopedia Man. Bye-bye, Sticks. Bye-bye. Any ant interference there, or was it fine?
Yeah, little ants,
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And it's goodbye from me. I am going to grab some food because I'm very hungry right now. Yeah. I know I'm not going to be eating any of Paul Rudd's ant cream. Bye-bye.
Ant cream. Yeah, make sure ants don't eat your food, man.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
They're little bastards.
Yeah, I know. Cover that shit in plastic.
I get a lot of ants in my garden. It's really annoying.
Bastards.
So, in the summer months, I'm like, piss off. They keep eating my petals on my flowers.
Send an email to Paul Rudd saying, fuck off.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
Yeah. Bye-bye. That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for Twitter at FVF_podcast. If you do, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. If you're feeling really generous, you can buy us a one-off coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee account. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.